Welcome to this episode of the OTTRED Spotlight podcast. I am lucky enough throughout the course of my work every day, every week, every month to come across multiple amazing people who have got different areas of domain expertise that matter to the entire ecosystem of streaming, and increasingly what that constitutes is the digital landscape. Something that is often talked about but misinterpreted and possibly even overlooked as we focus more on bots, AI, and what technology brings to the complexion of this arena is customer centricity. Customer centricity and the notion that people buy from people is something that we often talk about, but how often do we weave that into the fabric of how we operate as a business and really pay attention not only to the customer touch points, but what happens to the psychology of a customer between those touch points? In this episode, I'm going to be talking to Ragna, and Ragna has worked at IBM in various roles, but focusing more and more on areas around customer centricity. Her expertise in this domain has led her to be, in my mind, a thought leader. And in recent times, Ragna has brought the equity associated to that experience into Kling, one of the leading organizations in the streaming space when it comes to subscriber retention. Ragna, welcome to the OTTRED Spotlight podcast.
Thank you for this lovely invite, and it's a pleasure to be with you.
I'm really looking forward to talking about customer centricity today.
Me too, always.
On the Spotlight podcast, we started off these podcasts talking about people's careers and unpacking their careers, and more as the podcast has got more attention, it's allowed me to get more focused on areas, dimensions, domains that really mean a lot to where the industry is and where it's going. And customer centricity, I know from all of the jobs that I've had, and even just as a consumer, as a business and a consumer, it matters on a daily basis. What's led you to be such an expert on this topic? What's the course of your career and your life that's made you so passionate about customer centricity?
Thank you for the word passion, because I would not call myself expert, but I would call myself very passionate about customer experience centricity. It's interesting because when I started my studies, I always wanted to work for the advertisement industry. I wanted to work for an agency. Luckily, I did not do that. And I joined, as you said before in the entry, I joined IBM at a stage where the company was really disrupting itself and had to build something completely new. And I joined at that time a rookie organization, which was the inside sales organization, or now it's called digital sales organization. And it was a startup, if you want, within the big conglomerate of IBM.
Big Blue.
Yeah. And it was a super interesting time at that time. We could do everything. I was selling, we have been transforming ourselves, etc. The interesting thing is, at one point in time, after various roles, as you said, local ones, EMEA ones, and global ones, I ended up with a project of a digital internal transformation on customer experience. And that was the first time where I heard about that notion. And then I suddenly realized that everything that I always did was always around the customer. So everything from the selling piece, the marketing piece, the advertisement piece, that was always centered around customers. And now I finally had a word for it, which is customer experience or customer centricity. And that was really the place where I wanted to be. And I think my biggest asset is that I really try to put myself into the shoes of the customer, of the other person. Might be overly empathic, could be, but it really is something that I think is the secret for understanding the other side. And once you understand the other side, it's easier to anticipate what your customer wants to achieve, because at the end, this is what a company needs to do. They need to prove value, they need to bring value, and they need to support their customers to achieve what they want to achieve easily in the way they want to achieve them. Yeah.
Do you think that customer centricity is accentuated or under threat in the age of AI?
I think it's getting even more important. As you said in the entry as well, with the rise of all the artificial intelligence, of all the bots that are coming, I think empathy And customer centricity will be even more important because it allows to be authentic as well. And it allows to stay at the core of what your business needs to be, because your business is to serve your customers, no matter in which industry you work.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's be straight with each other. Business is business, and businesses exist to make money.
Yeah.
They need to recognize this, but at your level, it's also important as a customer centricity leader to recognize the wider agenda of the context, right? And make sure that a business is set up so that it's efficient, so that it's dealing with customer centricity, but also achieves its objectives as a business, right? You must have seen that at IBM, and I know Kling are the masters with the way the leadership team works at orchestrating all of these agendas. What's your advice to people? What's your observations when it comes to the need to focus on that and then recognize the wider horizon as well?
I think it's very simple, because you can tie it directly to revenue figures and to tie that to growth, because there is this saying that everybody knows: it's more expensive to acquire a new customer 5 to 25 times, depending on where you are, in which industry and setup. But bottom line is, it's more expensive to gain a new customer. So it's common sense, or that you understand you need to keep your customers. That's one thing. The other thing is, if you generate growth, and there are various studies about this. There's a McKinsey study that says that those companies that really manage to grow efficiently, they generate 80% of their revenue from their existing customers. So again, it's something. If you see that black on white, there is a clear business sense for it. Sometimes what I saw is that the customer experience programs were too high level and could not tie to the revenue figures and to the business growth. And then you have a problem, absolutely. But if you tie it to these figures, tie it to retention figures, do you retain your customers? Do you help them to grow? Do you fight churn? Which is the core business of what Kling does, by the way, which I admire a lot, because the whole idea of subscriber retention management, specifically in SaaS, is a super, super hot topic.
I'm going to be honest with you, Ragnar. I think customer centricity, customer success, I hear companies all over the world, not just in our sector, in lots of sectors, jumping onto this topic now. Why do you think that is? And what do they need to do to actually get into the heart of where the value of this topic is?
Well, first of all, it's a buzzword that everybody uses, and that does not help. Let's put it that way, because some people, when they hear customer centricity, say, oh, that's again. And that's a pity, because it is really an important topic. The other thing is that a lot of companies just think it's enough to put it as a layer above what they have already and just add a customer centric layer, which is not working. So customer centricity needs to be lived by each and every employee. But each and every employee drives that customer centric notion and needs to have the attitude to understand that they participate to the overall experience that the customers have. And that's super hard to achieve, specifically when you have a setup that generally was not built on this idea of customer centricity. Some companies, let's face it, don't need it at certain stages. When they are the only players, they don't have to be customer centric because their products are wanted. But a lot of companies really have replacement products and have competition where they need to set themselves apart. And how do they set them apart? Via customer centricity. So coming back to your question, it is a transformation, and it's a journey, and it's a marathon. So it's really something that doesn't happen overnight. You need to have a lot of breadth, and you need to have a strong backing from the top. That's also important. And you really need to keep it as a long-term strategy and as an aspiration that you want to get to, because it will not happen overnight.
So I think that people will be watching this. I think a lot of what you're saying will resonate, and they'll go, absolutely, this woman knows what she's talking about. Then they'll pretty quickly arrive at the point where they'll go, so how do we do it? How do you do that? How do you build a business where everybody appreciates, from the receptionist through to the CEO, what customer centricity is about?
Well, I think it starts with a lot of these transformation projects with a vision. What do I want to be for my customers? That would be the starting point. And that vision, of course, is something that needs to be agreed upon, likely in a smaller audience. Then you need to understand what kind of process your customers basically go through. It's a journey. So you have very high-level building blocks that follow this journey. Again, this is something that you can set up, and then you need to involve your employees to make sure that you understand what kind of emotions do you want to generate on your customer side. What is it that you want to stand for in each of these process steps that you've defined before? So it is a transformation. It's a long-term project, and you need to involve also the grassroots. You have the top backing up, but you also have the grassroots experience, because very often the people that really work with the customers, they know exactly where the problems are, but often they are not heard. Sometimes also those people, even if they are not working with customers, but they have key functions in the organization, they know why things, for example, take too long or are cumbersome, etc. But again, it's hard for them to get heard. And all this knowledge of the company that is existing already needs to be pulled in, ideally also without any fear of saying things, because that's also sometimes not that easy when you have to speak out things that don't work. And then you need to build from that and carry it and take ownership of it.
Yeah, absolutely. You just said something that interests me about how do you want people to feel? What emotion do you want them to engender when they're experiencing your brand? And they might not even be a customer yet, but they're interacting with your brand. How do you do that? Because I think a lot of organizations will have a process map. This is what we do. Is it about the what we do, or is it about another layer of another swim lane where you go, at that point, what is that emotion? What emotion is that customer left with?
Yeah. And what's the emotion that customer comes with to me? Yeah. Sometimes, specifically in the help area and the support area, there is a big need. There is a strong emotion connected. Most of these customers that reach out to support have a problem. That's why they reach out to support. If I manage to resolve that problem in a customer-centric, empathic way, if I show the customer that I'm close to them, that I understand, even though I might not have an answer now, but I take ownership. That is something where I translate to the customer, you're not alone, I'm at your side, and we get through this until the very end, and I'm going to help you, you're not alone. And these are emotions that you generate. This is the classical example of people being super unhappy, but if you manage a difficult situation well, then you can turn these customers that are massive detractors to advocates and fans of the brand.
I've experienced that personally. You know, where I've been a customer in a frustrating moment, or when I was in my telco days in senior operational leadership, we always used to say that's the moment when you get to show your true colors as a brand. You know, the sales guys are selling the dream, but we need to, make that dream a reality. I know you buy into that as well, but it's that notion that everybody sells. And I guess that's where it comes back to the business context of customer centricity, right? If you impart a good feeling around what you do and how you do it. There must have been moments in your career that are good anecdotes for either customers, situations, innovative thinking. What would be maybe one of those examples where something that you've done at IBM or something that you've been involved with at Kling, that are progressive and actually set that benchmark?
Most of these samples are simple ones, because sometimes there are big pain points that are not seen by a company internally unless you talk to customers. And when you discover things like, for example, missing visibility, and these are no-brainers in a way, but sometimes it needs the conversation with a customer to understand how important that is for the person and how much value it can drive for them. So, for example, visibility in a big organization, when you have many people raising support tickets, you don't have an overview. You don't know what your teammates have raised. Super simple to build up in a tool, but it was something that was not existing. And just by a conversation with customers, that really was a pain point, because they had to go to their colleagues to understand what they have raised as issues already, and didn't have the visibility. And just by creating a group and creating that visibility, we resolved a big pain point for them.
It sounds as though you're an advocate of the keep it simple.
Yes.
Model. Keep it tactical, keep it simple.
Yes.
Is that one of the things that puts people off exploring this topic in more depth? That it sounds great, and it's nice to discuss the kind of fluffy stuff on top, but they don't really understand, they're worried that it's going to be more complicated at the heart of it.
And it can be more complicated, because you really have, and sometimes I also go down that path and I need to pull myself back, because I tend to be a perfectionist at times, and then you lose a bit the whole picture. Yeah. So that's important, that you really keep the whole picture, and that you accept that sometimes it's the first step, and there comes a second and the third, and there might be 100 more, and you potentially never achieve excellence, but you aspire to go there. And I think that's the thing to accept, that you cannot expect to achieve excellence overnight. And the question is, what is excellence? Excellence always changes as well, by the way, with all the innovation that we see in the market, because the expectations of a customer today might be completely different and not enough in 2 years or 1 year from now. Yeah.
Is customer centricity a different thing in a business to business context to what it is in a business to consumer context?
That's a very good question, and there are a lot of debates about this. I think it harmonizes now. There was a difference, of course. I think with the tools that we have at place and the facilities now, it gets less and less relevant, the difference. Because at the end, you need to handle volume in B2C. That's the big difference, because in B2B, you don't have such volumes to handle. But the tools that are coming out now, or the facilities, are able to handle that. And I think what it ends up with is this typical human-to-human interaction. Rather than B2B or B2C or B2B2C, you say human-to-human. It's something that comes up as a term at times, and it
I like that.
shows that authentic, people-centric element of it.
The bot on the IKEA website in a B2C context, it's a bot.
Yeah.
It's a cartoon.
Yeah.
But do you think still that companies are positioning their product pretending that it's a human when it's really a bot?
I think some still are.
Why do they do that? What's the need?
Because they're probably afraid that people feel managed by a machine. But this is a reality that we all need to adopt to. That's not going to go away. And the question is, how much do you know about it? I think we need to take the fear away of people. Yeah. But then taking the fear away also means you need to be open and transparent. Yeah. And you can't pretend to be something that you're not. And I think if you show that blend of the machine supporting and being useful and efficient, because at the end, let's face it, nobody enjoys for example, having to resolve something with a company and having to use a bot or hanging at the phone for I don't know how long. What you want is to get a solution quickly. Ideally, you don't even want to interact with people. You just want to have this resolved quickly. And that's when it can be efficient, it can help you if it brings you to that point so that you really have a resolution quickly. People, that's my personal opinion, people don't care if it's a machine or a person. It needs to be efficient and needs to bring me the value that I want to see.
I know that I'm lucky enough to have you at Studio Red today because you're in Dubai for an award ceremony that you're the judge of. The fact that is the case talks to me about the level of recognition that you've got on this topic globally. What's the mood music among your peers? Other people with your kind of position of authority, accountable for customer centricity, no matter what their job title is. What do you talk to each other about? What are the progressive trends within customer centricity?
And of course, it's a bubble, but it's a big bubble. The trends that we discussed about. So first of all, and again, it's a no-brainer when you get involved a bit more in the AI innovation, is the hyper-personalization, because it is something that customers want. They want to be treated like individuals, like them personally, not like a cohort of people. So ideally you reach that you really are very pinpointed in how you treat your customer. And so this hyper-personalization is possible, or will be possible in a depth that we could not imagine a couple of years ago. But that also means, because it's possible, customers will more and more be demanding this from companies. So what we talk about is the need to understand and to adopt in a speed that we probably have not seen for quite a while. I think that's a bit of a, not a fear, but it's a consciousness of that need of speed. Yeah,
it makes me think of something else in this digital age as well. You know, increasing number of products where we interact with our customers, etc., which is data. You know, you're talking about hyper personalization, but that's dependent on data.
Yeah.
If you think of the stack of things that we're talking about now, we're talking about customer centricity, AI and bots, hyper personalization, data underpinning all of that to make it effective. Is it too much for some companies to truly get their head around all of these things at once?
Yes, definitely. And it's also very difficult to see in between all these trees, which one is the right tree for me. There's so much fog, there's so much noise. I think that will be the thing. When the fog goes down, then we will see a bit clearer and we will see consolidation, because at the moment we have like mushrooms, AI tools popping up and doing similar things, overlapping things. I think the secret will be to bring solutions that are easy also to adopt for companies to the market, because then you have a chance to really bring it quickly also to your customers. But at the moment, it's a big noise.
Do you think it's one process, or is it different processes across the customer life cycle?
It should be one, because only then you reach that other trend that we also discussed, which is the seamless omni-channel experience. Because if you have that scattered, and that's also the problem with data very often. Companies have a lot of data, but they have them at various places. And the secret is how you pull that together to really leverage them. So to achieve that omni-channel experience, that seamless one, no matter which channel you use to interact with a company, there you need data, there you need it in one place. Otherwise, you will not manage that.
What's a great example that you can think of a company that does all of this stuff really well?
So for omni-channel experience, I'm very impressed by Uber. It's a really, everybody of us knows the Uber experience.
Yeah.
It works. It's simple. It works. It's customer centric. You have various channels that are covered there. You have the app. You have the human interaction with the taxi driver, and you have also the email interaction. So that works. That for me a great example.
Do you find yourself in situations as somebody that's obsessive about this topic, where you look at something, let's say Uber, and you just naturally start to think of ideas on how you could make it even better?
All the time. All the time. That's whenever I interact with anybody, any company or so, I'm always stuck with this. And I think that's a disease of people working in that space.
Yeah.
But you asked about samples. One, for me, the perfect sample when it comes to hyper-personalization comes from the streaming industry. Of course, Netflix. Well, if you imagine which each of these series have different pictures that are shown to different people. They really cluster you and they give you a completely different experience. How they think is the most appealing for you. That for me is so interesting and so impressive how they do that. Or Spotify, how these recommendations, because of what they know about you, they really leverage the data. They don't ask again. They know about you and they find these correlations and offer you and recommend you things that might be interesting for you.
Personalization in streaming is a topic that ignites me, as you can imagine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ragna. And you know, some of the things that I hear about on the market that organizations are hothousing now to test out around personalization are mind-blowing. You know, the opportunity again with all of the data science that exists to go so far ahead of what personalization constitutes at the moment. Well, it's into the realm of what you're talking about, right? It's hyper personalization. Ragnar, for anybody listening that's maybe, most companies in the streaming space are not Netflix. They are organizations that are probably less than 500 people, sometimes a lot less than 500 people. I'm sure there will be, even within the OTTRED network, founders that are listening to you going, we need some of that. We need some of the stuff that Kling acquired when they bought Ragnar in from IBM. What would be your key points to them? If you're a smaller business and you need to distill all of this stuff down, if you could impart some wisdom to those organizations, what should they be thinking? Where should they start?
Start with your customer. Talk to your customers. You hopefully have a good relation to them. If not, build it up and get honest feedback. And don't shy off getting negative feedback as well, because that allows you to grow. So try to really look closely what you find, what is the reality of your customers, and start with this. Then understand what do you want to be for your customers? What is the value that they can get out of your product? What is your sweet spot also? Because that's also a super key topic. Customer success is a function that is absolutely relevant specifically for SaaS companies. Even for non-SaaS companies, the relationship topic of keeping customers is super essential. But you can only make customers happy when you really have met the sweet spot of those customers that you sold to, because you need to understand upfront. It starts much earlier than at the customer success side. Upfront, do these customers that I want to sell to, do they have a chance to be successful with my product? Do they really, what do they want to achieve with it? And are they able to achieve it with my product? And yes, I know there are situations where you probably need to sell anyway, even though you know that the match is not completely ideal. So I talk about the perfect situation, but in a perfect world, you should really be very clear on what your ideal customer profile is. And really be very distinct on selling to these customers, because then you have a chance to really keep them all. When you take care of them after the deal, then you really have a chance to keep them.
That makes a lot of sense. And, I can't help but think while you're talking about that around why Kling are so well positioned to help organizations with all of the methodology and technology there actually get ahead of these experiences. Subscriber retention is about not waiting until that moment where they're maybe going to churn. It's about how do you identify those characteristics and get ahead of it. I'm trying to imagine what that would be in other organizations, because I can naturally, I live in the streaming world. I totally see that. But that opportunity to get ahead of the customer psychology must exist in every sector for every business. Yeah.
So Kling is able to really visualize and predict if there is a chance and a risk for churn because of the algorithms, etc. So you really have a chance to cluster data, you cluster cohorts, then you can build your retention strategies to be ahead of the curve, as you said, to make sure that you don't lose them, but you can anticipate that there is a potential risk. Okay. If you don't have that, again, usage data, understand, do your customers use your tool? If they're not using it, they can't generate value, and you will very likely not keep them.
Yeah.
So I think the whole notion of customer success, looking at exactly these elements of usability and usage of the tool. Do the new features, do they really arrive at the customer side? Because you need... Obviously, SaaS companies keep on introducing new features. They're very innovative and they bring new topics to the market, but these also need to be embraced by the customers and understood, because it doesn't help me when I deliver features without end and the customers can't follow and they don't use the full potential of the tool, which we all know. There are tools that we use 10% potential, but this is the secret of customer success. Promoting it.
That's happened to me a million times in my life. I buy something that looks cool in the shop.
Yep.
And then I don't learn how to use it properly. And within 4 weeks, 6 months, it's gathering dust.
Exactly. And that's why customer success is such an essential organization element. For me, it's a key part of an organization.
I'm not sure if it was you, Ragnar, or somebody else. It was you, or it might have been the lady that heads up customer success at Cinemedia, Lucy. who said, when I asked you what customer success was, you or Lucy's response was, it's about adoption.
Mm-hmm.
Was that you? Or was that...
No, it was likely Lucy, but I agree with her.
Yeah. So, and she's amazing as well when it comes to this area. And that just clicked with me. I was like, and because of the personal context of my understanding, you know, unless something gets adopted, the rest of the customer journey is just redundant because it's not even going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, adoption must be one of the strands of DNA at the heart of good customer success recognition strategies.
Yes, I agree. Adoption means you're sticky. And how do you get sticky? By touching on the emotions of people. And if you like, I like working in a tool. I see the value that I get out of it. I like the easiness of working with it. These are all things that touch me personally. And everybody of us is a consumer of a product. So we all know this feeling. And that's what you need to achieve.
There's so much I could ask you. I've got two more questions. One of them is, how much does a person, an employee, represent in terms of personifying these customer centricity strategies? Because so much of it is system facilitated, embedded into the protocols of how the system guides you through it. But when I'm talking to someone, I know this for a fact in my life, if two companies have got the same product, same rough price point, if I like that person more, I'm going to go with that.
Yep.
You know, how important is that element of driving recognition that you, as an employee, personified this strategy?
A lot, because as you said, the identification between, or the differentiation between products very often is very, very small. And what counts then is how you set yourself apart, and how likable you are, how the customer feels heard or understood or listened to. Sometimes it's just enough to have time and listen, and just to hear and to understand. And you don't even have to agree at times. Communication is such a key element. If you have an open ear, you build that rapport, and then you have this USP that you have in contrary to your competition.
It makes me think of one more question that I want to add. As somebody that exists in the human capital recruitment space, what are the headline characteristics of someone that's going to be amazing in customer experience, customer success, whatever title it gets? What are the things you look for in someone that's amazing?
That's and you know, we have been discussing about that because we have been working on the recruitment together. For me, the customer success is a completely underestimated role. Let's start with this, because it's a revenue driver, and it's not obvious at times. So these people have to be relationship builder. They have to be excellent communicators, proactive communicators, super, super key, because you can kill or promote a relationship with communication. And if you're not clear, if you're not proactive, if you're not transparent, that doesn't build trust. So communication is super important. It's also important to be able to deliver bad messages, because you can't be a people pleaser, because you have to say no very often. And these are conversations that some people shy off having, because you don't want to be the party destroyer. But sometimes, and very often, you have to do it, because you also have to stay in line. Not everything is possible just because the customers are asking for it. That's the big misunderstanding on customer centricity. It's not about saying yes to everything. It's about understanding where they're coming from, and understanding if we can find a mitigation. Perhaps it's not possible, but something else is possible, or to explain why things are not possible. But to listen and to understand the root cause of things.
I think that's where a lot of people misunderstand what this area is about, that they're just there to say yes to the customer. But actually, it's incumbent on you, isn't it? Your accountability is to have a rich enough emotional level of intelligence to know how to approach that conversation, and the right kind of vocabulary to navigate it, so that you actually create more respect between you and the customer in that hard moment.
You don't just have the external conversation, you also have to have the internal conversation, because when these are things that you really need to have for your customer, you have to fight for them, and there are different priorities. You have to likely fight with 20 other projects that are equally important. And then the question is, how do you get through the understanding, the root cause, and the business value that needs to be driven by this change that you want to get for your customers. So it's really a challenging role. It's a super important one, but it's not easy. Yeah.
Ragna, thank you for giving us a view of the kind of global within your own peer group among thought leaders and business leaders and customer success, customer centricity leaders, what happens, the strategic appreciation that companies should turn their mind towards, the operational level of what it means to embrace this, and then, like you've just been sharing with us, right at a tactical level in the moment, everything that you have to be successful in this area. And I've got one more question for you. At the end of every one of the OTTRED podcasts since we started this series a few years ago now, I ask everyone, if you could give some advice to the younger you, what would it be? What advice would you give to the younger Ragna?
I would earlier work directly with customers. I would be more daring to really try out things, and I think I would be more daring.
You think you were too reserved?
Yes, I think I was too reserved. I was too much in my line. And I was not daring enough to just try different things. I think that is something, because at the end, what builds you as a leader and as a thought leader is that you really understand various aspects, not just one thing, but really the breadth of and the environment that you're acting in. And that is something I could have had earlier. I'm growing into this now, but this is something I would do differently.
It's never too late to change, yeah?
No, absolutely not.
Ragna, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. It doesn't surprise me that you're in this space, because I think your value set as a person align with becoming a professional and a thought leader in this space. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and it's been a pleasure having you on the OTTRED Spotlight podcast. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.